Good afternoon, and it is a pleasure to be with you all from all across the state of Louisiana and be once again with the LMA. I appreciate the relationship that I and my administration have had with the Louisiana Municipal Association, which has continued to thrive and actually strengthen under the strong and excellent leadership of John Gallagher. And I want you all to know that I call upon John often as we confront things in Louisiana that we need to solve, because I don't believe in solving my problems at the expense of others. And I certainly don't believe in solving our problems related to the budget constraints that we've had and all those budget difficulties on the backs of local government. And so because of that, I call on John and others across the Municipal Association quite often. I also want to thank President Hennigan for the introduction, but also, he and his wife Della have been a partnership there in DeQuincy for a long time. He has provided excellent leadership as mayor of DeQuincy, and he's been a great leader here at the LMA. So, and for the introduction as well. Mayor, thank you so much for everything that you have done. Also want to recognize our insurance commissioner, Jim Donlin. Jim, thank you very much for, well, did he slip out? There he is. Jim, thank you very much for being here and for all that you do for the state. Also, we're in Lake Charles, and so I just want to commend Mayor Nick Hunter for the job he's doing as mayor of Lake Charles, but also the way that they host this conference and so many conferences throughout the year. But Nick Hunter, you're doing a great job. All the people from Lake Charles, so thank you for what you're doing. The last time I was in this building was just about a year ago, and Nick Hunter had just been elected and taken office, and we had a hurricane approaching. We had flooded areas here in Calcasieu Parish, but also, and more so, across the river in Texas. And we set up a shelter here, and it was one of the finest shelters that we've ever set up, and I commend the folks in Calcasieu and the folks at Lake Charles for making that happen, for being neighbors to our neighbors in Texas. And that's what this organization is all about, making sure that we're all neighbors to one another. Not just neighbors, but partners, as President Hennigan mentioned a while ago. And I believe in that partnership, because what I know is every single one of your constituents is also a constituent of mine. So to the degree that we can better partner and you can serve your constituents better, then I am also serving my constituents better. And that is very important to me, and I want to thank you for the role that you play. And if you don't know Toy Taylor and Roderick Scott, they work for me. They work in the governor's office, and their job is to make sure that they are communicating with you, and that if you've got something that we can help you with, please don't hesitate to call upon them and let us know. Also want to thank the LMA for your board's unanimous support of a bipartisan compromise plan that finally allowed Louisiana to have the budget stability that we need going forward and that we have lacked for too long. It only took 7 special sessions and 3 regular sessions, but who's counting? We got there, and we can either be focused on how frustrating it was, how hard it was, and how long it took, or like me, you can be excited about where Louisiana is today. Because make no mistake, our state is on a much better path towards prosperity and opportunity. And that's what it's all about. So thank you for your help, for your support of that compromise plan. It did make a big difference. And so from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know that I appreciate you. As a result of that, we were able to reduce the tax burden on the state of Louisiana from last fiscal year to this fiscal year by more than $550 million. We reduced state general fund expenditures by more than $200 million, but we did so in a strategic way. We were able to stabilize funding for higher education so that for just the second time in 2 years, but it's also the second time in a row, we fully funded higher education and our TOPS program, and the appropriation for GO grants, which is how we provide need-based aid for higher education, was funded at the highest amount in the history of our state. I believe that higher education is important. Because of this stability, Moody's credit rating has already taken Louisiana off the negative watch list, and I suspect over the coming months, we're actually going to have our credit worthiness, our rating upgraded, which is really important because that allows us to service our debt less expensively, and we can use that savings in the state of Louisiana for other purposes. But that's not the only good news that we have to celebrate. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reported last week that Louisiana's economy grew faster than that of 35 other states in the first quarter of 2018. Business Insider rated Louisiana number 2 in the South for economic development, considering 6 different factors. In Louisiana, we know that last year wages grew faster than the national average. Our wages grew at 2.9%. Nationally, they grew at 2.5%. We have more Louisianans working now than ever before. Unemployment is at a 10-year low. And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, no state's unemployment declined more than Louisiana's unemployment declined. Business Facilities recently ranked Louisiana among the top 10 states for economic growth potential, foreign trade zone activity, chemicals manufacturing. In addition, Lake Charles, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Hammond, Shreveport and Bossier, and the Port of South Louisiana-based Gramercy Foreign Trade Zone all received top 10 honors as regional economic leaders. So we are excited about what's going on in Louisiana. We continue to attract investment from around the country and around the world, and we're doing so at record levels here. We have the biggest economic development projects in the history of our state that we've announced over the last year. And it's not just about jobs and economic investment, although that's incredibly important to our quality of life. But we're making other decisions that are improving quality of life. We just told you about investing in higher education again. But it's also true that we're investing in our human capital in other ways. For example, I'm very proud to tell you that the Medicaid expansion in Louisiana is working extremely well. When I became governor, we had one of the highest rates of uninsured people in the country. It was 24%, almost 1 in 4. Today, it is less than 1 in 10. 470,000 working poor people who have health insurance today who didn't have it when I became governor, most of them for the first time in their lives. And the grand cost to the state of Louisiana last year is that we saved $343 million. And then this year we're going to save $265 million. And you say, well, how can that be? It really is simple arithmetic. When someone is uninsured, it costs us 40 cents on the dollar to pay for their care. But to insure them through the Medicaid expansion, it costs us no more than 10 cents on the dollar to provide their coverage. 40 cents versus 10 cents. And the 40 cents comes from the general fund, which we have a shortage of. The 10 cents comes from a statutory dedication, money that we wouldn't have, but for the fact that we expanded Medicaid in the first place. But it isn't just about saving money. It isn't just about insuring more people. It's about achieving better health outcomes for the people of Louisiana so that their lives are better, they are more productive, they can continue to work. And for many of them, they can continue to live. Because if you have access to primary care and preventative care and diagnostic evaluations, you're going to find out if you've got cancer sooner so that it can be treated more effectively and more cheaply. But not just cancer. And by the way, we have thousands of people who are receiving cancer care because of Medicaid expansion. It's also hypertension, it's diabetes, it's all of those things. So when I say that expanding Medicaid was the single biggest, easiest decision I will ever make as governor, I mean it. And the same Catholic Christian faith that tells me that being pro-life on the issue of abortion is right also tells me that the Medicaid expansion is a pro-life position as well. And the numbers that I gave you don't even include the economic impact of the Medicaid expansion. Dr. Jim Richardson of LSU did a study. The grand cost to the state of Louisiana last year was $43 million, in exchange for which we got $1.85 billion to provide health care coverage that turned over in our economy and actually had an impact of $3.5 billion. It's responsible for 19,000 jobs and $100 million worth of revenue to the general fund because of additional sales tax and income tax collections because of that impact. And if you add that $100 million to the savings that we had last year into this year, it's actually even a much bigger deal. But for you all across the state of Louisiana, one of the things that you should understand about the Medicaid expansion is that the reason we have not had any rural hospital closures in Louisiana, unlike the rest of the South, is because of the Medicaid expansion, because your hospitals are giving out less unreimbursed care because there is a payer for more people who go through those doors. And their bottom line is better as a result, and they are able to stay open. And by the way, if a hospital ever closes its doors, it doesn't just close its doors for the poor or the uninsured or the Medicaid, it closes its doors for everyone. And rural hospitals are the cornerstones in every community that they serve. And I'm just going to ask you to take a look around the country at where rural hospital closures has happened, and take a look at where states have expanded Medicaid, and you will see a direct correlation. So it is the right thing to do. I know that our state is better because of it, and we're going to continue to make sure that we deliver better health outcomes because that's what it's all about. You know, when it comes to quality of life, too, there's not much quality of life if you don't have good drinking water. A lot of you have experienced difficulties in this area. And in fact, you know, we've neglected our infrastructure in Louisiana and really around the country for too long. And it's not just our roads and bridges, but it's our roads and bridges too. But it's our water and wastewater systems. And so we know that we can do better. And so even in the midst of the 3 sessions that we had this year, it was actually 4 if you count the regular session, we continue to work on water infrastructure across the state of Louisiana. You know, in the past, problems were fixed by putting Band-Aids on them instead of solving the underlying issue, and that actually leads to more problems later, and the problems are more costly when you get to them later. Once we get that far behind in proper maintenance, it is almost impossible to catch up. And we know that it is almost always more cost-effective to maintain a water system than it is to replace it. More importantly, we don't want to wait till an emergency happens to address a problem. And Louisiana, make no mistake, is in desperate need of a coordinated, collaborative approach to improving our state's rural water infrastructure. The Louisiana section of the American Society of Civil Engineers has estimated that Louisiana needs $5.3 billion in drinking water improvements over the next 20 years, and another $4.46 billion to maintain and repair those improvements. I think we can all agree that we're not going to spend $10 billion on our systems. We just don't have that kind of money, but it doesn't mean we can't be smarter about how we approach these issues. In order to begin addressing the challenges, I've created the Rural Water Infrastructure Committee. The committee includes representatives from regulatory entities, funding agencies, and key stakeholders. There are also representatives from Louisiana Department of Health and Environmental Quality, the Delta Regional Authority, the Rural Water Association, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Protection, the Office of Community Development, the Legislative Auditor, and my office. And by working collaboratively with all the stakeholders, the committee is tasked with providing recommendations for funding sources, criteria for receiving funding, and providing local assistance, just to name a few of their objectives. Already, we've been sending out people for site visits, a direct result from the task force, to assess the situation in various communities across the state of Louisiana. In fact, we did that just this week with an outage in East Feliciana Parish. We also have an emergency response team put together so that we can be on the ground almost immediately should the need arise. We want to help communities find solutions. No more Band-Aids, so that their citizens can feel assured that their water is safe and reliable. And we want to help city and parish leaders get to the point where they can sustain their systems on their own without need for help from the state or from the federal government if possible. So I encourage you to call upon us if we can be of assistance. I also want to update you on some of the priorities related to flood recovery and prevention that we've been working on. Last month, I asked the Restore Louisiana Task Force overseeing our housing recovery from 2016. It was 2 years ago this month that August flood hit. Additionally, March of 2016 had seen an unprecedented flood. But those two floods together caused 56 of our 64 parishes to be declared major federal disasters. That had never happened in 1 year. So last month I asked the task force to expand the reimbursement grant award for eligible homeowners from 50 cents on the dollar to 100 cents on the dollar. The task force unanimously approved that recommendation. An amended action plan was sent to Housing and Urban Development in Washington, and we received word this Monday that that was approved. So the Restore Task Force has already obligated $54 million in additional funds to more than 4,600 families, and ultimately, more than 10,000 families will benefit from $110 million in reimbursement funds. And one of our top priorities has been correcting the federal duplication of benefits issue. And for those of you who may not be aware of what this is, you know, after a disaster, FEMA directs you to ask for a Small Business Administration loan before you get a relief from FEMA. If you made that request and you received loan proceeds, or even if you were just approved and you didn't receive them, they count the amount of the loan that was approved as a duplication of benefits, making you ineligible to receive the grant dollars that are now available. And so this is a real problem, and we're working with the congressional delegation, with the White House, and with HUD for a solution. And if a solution comes to that problem, we know we can help thousands more homeowners across the state of Louisiana, and the changes that we recently made in the reimbursement amount will not impact our ability to deliver that relief if we get the duplication of benefits problem solved. And I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. You know, we're also excited to announce that Louisiana has been granted $1.2 billion in community development block grant funding for hazard mitigation purposes, so that we can reduce the likelihood of flooding going forward. And those dollars will be spent all over the state of Louisiana to make sure that we can reduce the risk of flooding going forward. So we're excited about what's going on in Louisiana. I'm excited. I want you to be excited. We're in a much better place than we were. And it's come because of a lot of hard work by you all, by folks at the parish level. A lot of legislators have done a great deal of work, and by the way, one of my favorite legislators is now one of your mayors, Mike Danahay. Congratulations to you on your recent election. So I want to maintain that partnership that I and my administration have with you individually and with this association. I know that LGAP funding is important. I know the Community Water Enrichment Funding Program is important. I know that capital outlay is important. and we're in a much better place than we were before. And I want you to know, as I said earlier, that I inherited the largest budget deficit in our state's history. It exceeded $2 billion state general fund the first full year that I was governor. But I have never balanced the state budget on the backs of local government. We have not done that to you. I haven't done it to the parishes because I do believe that you are partners with me in serving our common constituents. And with Louisiana on a more stable footing in terms of the predictability, the stability we have finally from a revenue and budget perspective, we are going to be able to do even more going forward. So thank you all for having me today. Share my enthusiasm and share my enthusiasm for the future of our state. We all have it as our mission to make sure that our children and grandchildren have a better state of Louisiana to live in, to be educated in, to get a job, a career. And I'm excited about that future. One of the reasons is the future looks a lot like these high school students from Sam Houston High School who are here today serving you this meal. And I appreciate the work that they're doing to make sure that they are raising the funds necessary to represent the state of Louisiana at the Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C. When they go there next year. So congratulations to them. Finally, my door is always open. I encourage you to call. I encourage you to visit if there's something that we can do to help you. Now, I'm going to ask you that you try to go through Troy and Roderick first, because there's a lot of you and there's only one of me. But we want to be good partners. Our door is open. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And finally, I'm going to ask that you continue to join your prayers to mine for our state and for our country, for leaders at all levels. One of the things that we need to do is be better role models for young people in the way that we engage in civil political discourse. It needs to be civil. Too often you turn on the news today and people are screaming at one another and nobody's listening. We have dysfunction that is paralyzing Congress because of hyper-partisanship. And I am very proud to tell you that that has not yet taken over in Louisiana. I say yet because there's a little more than it used to be, but we're in much better shape than they are nationally. But if we will all work together to make sure that we continue to talk and, more importantly, to listen to one another, and that when we speak, we do so in a civil manner, and if we will model that behavior to our children, Louisiana has no limits to what we can do, what we can become. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be your governor. And I'm going to continue to wake up every single day doing everything that I can for the people of the great state of Louisiana. God bless you and thank you so much.
The first thing I want to talk about is our foundation. Last year, we realized that we would never get our state parks where they need to be without some additional money. We looked around the country and we saw in other states this private-public partnership work real well. So with the support of the legislators, we were able to pass a foundation, culture, recreation, and tourism. That's all the money can be spent on. And we're going to be doing private-public partnerships in our state parks. This is a picture of a resort in a state park in West Virginia. In the 6 years that's been open, they brought in $50 million to the state park system. In Alabama, they put zip lines in the state park. They write a check for $500,000 a year to the state park system. We want local business entrepreneurs in your community to look at our state parks and what can we do to partner to make money, to provide additional quality things in the state park, and help draw people into your community. Maybe it's adding cabins, maybe it's a water slide. One thing we won't do, We won't allow anything to come into your community that has a negative impact on the community or competes with an existing local business. Everything we're looking at to do, we will completely vet with the local community leaders and the public to make sure it's a win-win. We're going to take that building in the French Quarter where we store art. We don't need to store art in the French Quarter. It's going to be a hotel or condos. We'll do a 99-year lease, get a small rent, and a percentage of gross sales. That money coming in should give us millions of dollars to help support museums and other things around the state. Remember, that money can only be used for culture, recreation, and tourism, so it'll be a great opportunity to bring in millions of dollars that we will be able to support the local communities around the state. It's going to take us a few years to get that money coming in, but we're already excited with the opportunities on Lake Pontchartrain next to Fontainebleau, building a resort like the one in West Virginia. We've got people looking at adding additional cabins. We moved a horseback riding operation into a state park at Boca Chica. The gentleman pays us $2 for a half day, $4 for a whole day. He's making a whole lot of money, and we just filmed a national horseback riding, trail riding show there, which is bringing people in from all over to ride horses. So we look forward to working with you in your community to see more of those things put in the state parks. Now, I can't leave here today without mentioning my pet peeve, and that is staycation. We are promoting all the great things to do in Louisiana, in other areas of the state, to try to get people moving around the state. And I ask you today, as I ask every audience I speak to, take one vacation when you normally would leave Louisiana and go see a part of Louisiana you haven't seen. I promise you won't be disappointed. I was speaking to a group of high school students not long ago, or last year, and I said, go home and ask your parents to take you to a place in Louisiana you haven't seen. Staycation right here in Louisiana. And when I finished, I asked for questions. Little girl in the front row, first question. So, Lieutenant Governor, where are you going on your staycation? She got me, I froze. Couldn't think. So I thought quick. I said, Toledo Bend and Natchitoches. Okay, that's good. So I went home that night and I told my wife the week before Christmas, we don't have anything planned. Why don't we go to Toledo Bend and Natchitoches? So we went to Toledo Bend, we caught some fish. The resort there fries them up for you. We spent 2 days in Natchitoches. And my mother-in-law stayed in that hardware store in Natchitoches. If you've ever been there, she was in there for 3.5 hours. When she went home, she posted on Facebook, 20 of her relatives from Houston have now visited Natchitoches because of her experience. So when you staycation and you talk about it and you spread the word, you're going to help drive more and more tourists into that community. So help us do that and help your neighboring cities and towns drive tourists there by staycation in Louisiana. Now, another way we are promoting all the towns and cities around the state is the Ambassador Program. This gives you an opportunity to talk about that fair, that festival, that great fishing spot that you know is special and unique to your town. And then you share it with us at #OnlyLouisiana, and we share it with the world. And now we got some videos for Mardi Gras we couldn't use, so don't send us any of those. But it's working. Someone sent us a picture of that ghost in the window at the DeRidder jail. If you haven't been to that Gothic jail, now I don't know if that ghost is real, but 4,000 people have been to DeRidder to look for that ghost. So, so if you got a ghost, post it and they will come. Now, we're always looking for new and exciting ways to get people around, moving around Louisiana. And this year we are working on a movie trail. People want to go where movies were shot and where people were shot, like Bonnie and Clyde south of Arcadis. So that'll be on the trail. But we're putting this movie trail together because we know people are coming to Louisiana because of something they saw on TV or a movie. And we know that we just did a study that we lent to the movie industry to justify the tax credits that shows that 9% of the people that come to Louisiana are strongly influenced, and it's part of their decision making, by something they saw on TV or in a movie. Duck Dynasty, NCIS New Orleans. I don't know, the Essence Festival this year had record-breaking crowds because of Girls Trip. Everybody wanted to know where the zip line was on Bourbon Street. So we know it has a tremendous impact, and we're going to take that movie trail to China this year because more young Chinese are traveling than ever, and we're going to entice them to come to Louisiana and see where all those movies were shot. So as we put this together and continue to add to it, we'll be reaching out to your communities to highlight all of those movies, TV shows, and spots that will draw an attraction on the movie trail. Now, this year, we decided it was time to change our brand. Really, people have been talking about it since I took office. They said, what's going to be the new brand? Well, we waited a couple years for two reasons. One is, pick your passion, really serve the people in the tourism industry well. They're very passionate people. And the second reason we didn't change it is I still got to go across the street and get my money from Jay Dart. So I didn't want to change his brand. But it was time, and we decided that we wanted to let the data drive how we brand Louisiana. It shouldn't be my idea, your idea. We want the best brand for Louisiana. So we looked around the country, and we found the guy that did it for the state that the brand put them on the map, and that's Pure Michigan. And we hired that guy. And we went around the country and into Canada, and we did focus groups. And all of the groups came back of all the logos and sayings, and 100% of them, when they narrowed it down to 6, picked Louisiana Feed Your Soul. You can feed it with music. You can feed it with fishing, fun, culture, history, religion. You can feed your soul in Louisiana with just about anything. And yes, food. So we took this past Mardi Gras Day. Once again, we had to think outside the box to get more bang for our buck. And many of your tourism folks gave up their Mardi Gras to go to Atlanta, Dallas, Houston. I was in Washington, D.C. Mardi Gras Day. We wrapped a food truck, and we gave out king cake, and we fed people's soul. And we talked about today, it's Tuesday in Washington, D.C., but back home it's Mardi Gras, and you're missing a party. And we got millions of dollars in free publicity around the country to roll out our new brand. So please help us by continuing to use the Louisiana Feed Your Soul brand as we continue to push that brand around the country and around the world. And before I close, I'm going to show you a short video of how we feed our soul in Louisiana.
Mention Louisiana, and images of Mardi Gras, jazz clubs, and late-night revelry are most likely the first things that come to mind. But there is far more to Louisiana than the Crescent City. And likewise, New Orleans is much more than the French Quarter and Fat Tuesday. Louisiana is a land of contrasts. Its different regions vary in physical appearance, from gentle rolling hills and lakes in the north to bayou swamps and the Gulf of Mexico in the south. Perhaps there is no better example of contrast than Louisiana's culture. Here, the American South meets French heritage. The result? A genteel Southern pace enveloped by a zest for life. And it's that pursuit of enjoyment that threads throughout Louisiana. Dancing to Zydeco in a local music hall, spicy boiled crawfish and the dare of how hot, casting a reel and hooking a fat bass, flying through a sea of grass on an airboat, the uneasy and mysterious thrill of touring a haunted antebellum home at night, the sound of jazz, blues, and soul drifting from back alleys and open doors. And yes, the craziest party in America, perhaps even the world. Louisiana isn't for spectators. It's for participants. For those that want to feed their soul and not only live the moment, but to become the moment. Here, excitement is a constant pursuit and one that's easily found. Louisiana, feed your soul.